Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Roc da Mic. Glad to have you here. Who says a woman can't succeed in a man's world? I didn't, but this lady I'm going to introduce has done just that. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Give a big, rousing Roc da Mic welcome to Vangella Hazle. Vangella, how are you?
I am good, Garfield. How are you doing?
Good, guys. Guys, for those who don't know, Vangela and I, we went to college together. We share a little history together. So,
Yes.
Vanji, how have you been doing?
I have been doing fine, wonderful, working hard and
Great.
doing my thing.
All right. So, Vanji, let's start at the beginning. Can you give
Okay.
us a little background about who Vangela is?
Okay. Well, that's a long story, right? Okay,
Let's
so
go.
start from where I was born. I was born in Hanover, in a little district called Chigwell. For those of us who know anything about Chigwell, it is that place that floods every year. And so as a child, I just had so much fun, growing up in Chigwell. But when I was about 4 years old, my parents, the water rose and my parents decided enough, right? Because the water came all the way up to the steps
That's like
and we
Newmarket,
had to
right?
use, pardon?
That's
Like
like the
New
Newmarket.
Market.
Okay, good.
Exactly. And so, but Chigwell is the original. And so we had to, move out. We moved out on bateau, which is what rafts, they
The
call the
rafts, okay.
rafts, right? Made of bamboo. And that's how we moved. And we moved to dry ground. And
Wow.
we moved to Montego Bay. And so my first 4 years of life were in Chigwell, a country girl running the
Country
common
girl.
and
Yes.
eating guava and picking, my brothers mostly eating the guava, coconut, every fruit tree you can think of.
And then you moved to the city and now
And
you became a
oh,
city girl.
oh my goodness, that was a rude awakening for me. No commons to run, no trees to climb. Oh my goodness. But
Okay.
yeah,
Sounds like you had a very happy and adventurous childhood. Now,
yes.
what about education? What about schooling?
Okay, so I started out, Mr. Brown's basic school in Chigwell, and then I went to, when we moved to Montego Bay, I attended infant school,
Hmm.
and then moved on to Mount Salem School, which was newly opened. Actually, no, I did go to boys' school first, Coronaldi Avenue,
Oh,
for a
okay.
few months, and then they built the school in Mount Salem to accommodate the growing population in Mount Salem. And so I attended that school, and from there I took the common entrance, and it was the weirdest thing. I almost didn't get to go to high school because when the results came out, my name was not in the paper.
Wow.
Yeah, and so what happened was the principal of Montego Bay High School, after they, did, you know, everything that registered the students, they found out that there were some extra spaces.
Okay.
So she actually went to the Ministry of Education and asked for any other students who had passed
Uh-huh.
but did not get a place, which is interesting. And so my name and a couple other people, got their names put in, and that's how I attended Montego Bay High School.
Okay. So from
And
Montego Bay High School, what happened?
oh, after Montego Bay High School, I attended the Michael,
The
that
Michael
noble
College. Got
institution where I encountered people like yourself. And
Oh,
those were some hilarious times.
that was
I
fun. That
remember
was
Mr.
fun.
Thomas's class. Oh my goodness.
Oh
But
my
that's a
God.
whole nother story, right? I
Those
can't
were the
talk your
days.
business now, right?
I won't talk
But
yours either, all right?
right. But this is, it was also one of the most wonderful times where, just meeting other young people and just, you start coming into your own at that time.
Right. True. That's
And,
true. Hmm.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so after college, what happened next?
Uh-huh.
Where did you go?
Okay, so after college, I got married, and I eventually moved to the U.S. I came to the U.S. in 1989. So I taught for a few years, and then I worked at the telephone company as a telephone operator for a while, and then I came to the U.S. So after coming to the U.S., I secured a job with the airlines. I worked there for 20 years.
Wow.
And so
Which airline
this
was
was
it? You
American Airlines.
American. Okay.
Yeah, and so I was an instructor there. So I kept my teaching. There was something about Michael that instilled that love of teaching and imparting
Teaching.
knowledge.
Hmm.
And so I think it followed me throughout the years. So I taught there, and then I after 20 years, in the meantime, I went to college. I got my degrees. I got two master's degrees. One in communication from University of Hartford and one in English at Central Connecticut State
Yeah,
University.
you always were one of those
Oh
English
my
teachers. Yeah.
goodness, I
Yeah, I
loved
remember. I remember
English.
you. Hmm.
Yes, I loved English. I used to love those classes where I got a chance to explain the
To express
poetry,
yourself. Uh huh.
and it was a wonderful time. Yeah. So after that, I taught in higher education. I'm still teaching in higher education just now,
Okay.
and I'm
Would you
also
care to say? Would you care to say where you teach now?
I teach now at Central Connecticut State University.
Okay. Good.
I also teach at Charter Oak State College, which is a completely online
Hmm.
university, and I also teach at Capital Community College.
Oh gosh. Well,
This
teaching
past
good.
semester, I took a break from Capital this past semester because there's just so much going on. So I had to
Hmm.
take a break and focus on other things.
All
So
right.
yeah. So
Okay.
right now I'm
Mhm.
completing doctoral studies at Central.
What
So
girl? You ain't gonna stop studying? What?
no, no,
Yeah.
I'm trying to stop, but
It,
it just keeps grabbing
it
me.
just keeps it. Oh.
I kind of have that love and thirst for knowledge.
Yeah, I like being in a classroom, girl.
Yeah,
Honestly, I do.
yeah, I
Hmm.
always have to be learning. I always have to be in a learning mode. And now I realize that I really don't have to be in school to learn.
Right.
So like
That's true.
I'm wrapping it up now, but otherwise that I'm always in that learning mode. I just
All right.
always want to know.
Wait, Vanji, something I remember about you from being in college.
Oh.
You always were that. No, 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 no. I ain't gonna
Okay.
talk.
Okay, okay.
You were always that black conscious
Yeah.
history buff. You were
Yes.
always interested in history, trying to know what the past was, especially
Yes.
in terms of
Yes.
Jamaican context. Can you
Oh.
explain to us where has that taken you?
Oh wow, this has taken me places, Garfield. I mean, I have I've discovered that that's my genre when it comes to writing because I've written a number of books over the years, but that historical fiction, and I think part of it was that my parents are great storytellers.
Uh-huh.
And so they would tell me stories of their life working with under colonial times. And
Okay.
one of the most interesting things my father said to me one day was that, back then there was no such thing as a Jamaican. The term Jamaican, the word Jamaican is new. It
Okay.
came about after in the 60s. So before that, you were considered a British subject. So my
Hmm.
mom, she worked in a great house, right?
Hmm.
And my father, he worked with an American couple. So he was kind of like the handyman for them, and my
Okay.
mom was a maid. And one of the interesting things was that even then in the 1930s, 1940s, your master or mistress could still beat you.
Wow.
And so I recall when I was at Michael, in one of the exams, we had to write an essay, and the essay it gave us three items to write a story around, and that it was a cane, a bottle of rum, and a pound of sugar. And I created a story
Wait,
that was based.
whose class was that in?
You know what? This was during an exam.
I don't remember
I
that.
think it was
I must
first
have
in
been
my first year. Yeah, I don't know what you were doing.
I must have been copying you or
Yeah,
something.
I don't know what you were doing, Walla, but what happened with that was that I recalled my parents' stories.
Uh-huh.
And so I wrote an essay. I think I know I passed the exam,
Uh-huh.
but afterwards I recalled that story. I rewrote it and I rewrote it as a novel. So that was my first novel called Mariana.
All right. We'll come to the no. We'll,
You're
we'll
coming to
come to,
that? Oh my
yeah, we'll come
goodness.
to that.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and so I've always dug into history and I still do that now. I do a lot of genealogy. I
Hmm.
do a lot of family trees. I just dig into the past and I just love history and for me history. We are living history.
True.
50 years from now, 100 years from now, somebody's going to look back at our lives and say,
Hmm.
wow, Garfield did this or Vangella did that. And so we become history. We become part of history. And so I always look at it that people whose lives we're looking at, they didn't know they were making history.
Right, right. They had no
And
idea.
so now we're looking at their lives and studying and so I say history is history and it's fun to look at and interesting to look at what happened, but it's also for us to learn. And so I just have been so nosy when it comes to looking back at the past
At
and
the
seeing
past.
how it has
Mhm.
affected where we are.
I remember you and I made a connection when we were talking about this place in Westmoreland. Remember the name? Abekuta?
Abuketi.
Right. How do you pronounce it?
Yes. Abuketi, as far as I know, that's what I
Yeah,
was
my
told.
my mom pronounced it Abekuta, and
Oh,
and
yeah.
it was a little village in Westmoreland where she
Mm-hmm.
grew up. Supposed to be a maroon village, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember some article about it having the great house having the first swimming pool in Jamaica. Because
Wow.
as a little kid, my mom would take us up there every time we visited
Yeah.
Westmoreland.
Wow. And but it didn't really mean anything to you at that time,
No,
right?
you know
So
when it really meant something?
yeah,
When I became an adult
yeah,
and we would visit Westmoreland and I got into the history stuff, I
yeah,
would always want to go there to see,
yeah.
if there was anybody I could talk to. But by the time we went there,
It
everybody
was
had moved
empty.
out. The village
Exactly.
was no more.
Exactly. So one of the things about I've heard it pronounced Abuketi. I really maybe I'm wrong, but I've heard it pronounced that way.
Right.
But what it is, and this is one of the reasons I love history so much. We're not really taught our history.
True. So true.
We're just taught those little bits and pieces that they think is relevant. When we
Uh-huh.
dig into our own history, we realize that we are more than what we're being told.
Right. Remember
So
the word. Remember the word is his story, right?
his
His
story,
story.
exactly. And so, as far as I understand, this was people who are from Abuketi, um, come from a Nigerian group that was
Right.
brought to
Mm-hmm.
Jamaica,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so we have the Etu and the Nago. There are two groups, one from Ghana and one from Nigeria,
Uh-huh.
and they were brought to Jamaica as indentured servants, right? And so they were brought to Jamaica and they settled in their own space. One set in Hanover and one in Westmoreland. The people in Abuketi
Mm-hmm.
or Abuketa they determined that this was the village they came from
Right.
in
Mm-hmm.
Nigeria, and so they wanted their village that they settled in to be named the same way,
Right. I
right?
spoke to a Nigerian last year, and he was telling me about the
Wow.
village with
I
the same
mean,
name.
a lot of us didn't know about this, and I only recently discovered it, and I'm like, wow, I have to go back to Jamaica and find that place. So they still, even until recently, they still spoke the language.
Uh-huh.
A lot of the dances that have come and practices that have come down to us
Uh-huh.
that we think came from slavery actually came from these groups.
From these groups.
So
Okay.
things like the Dinky Mini, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that came from these groups. So I think we need to we learn about Nani, which is wonderful. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and Taki and
Mm-hmm.
Kojo and all of those. But I think also we need to learn a little bit more about that cultural history that
Right.
only some people know if you're not from that area,
You
because
wouldn't
I
know.
think when we mentioned that village, I think we were the only ones who knew,
Who knew it?
right? Everybody else was like, what,
Yeah.
right? But
I used to go
we
there every
knew
time.
about it, and
Because
and so many
behind it, hold
others.
on, behind it, you had the ice factory, and
Ah,
the water used to run from a spring it fed the swimming pool at the Great House,
Oh,
and it
wow.
also went down to the ice factory. Yeah, but
Is the Great House still standing?
yeah, parts of it are still there. From what I'm gonna see if I
Wow.
can find the article to
Man, I
send to
need
you.
to win some money so I can go buy that place and fix it up. Because
And
you know what? This is one of the things I always say. We do a lot of celebrating, but we don't do a lot of documenting and preserving.
right.
Because something
Documenting
like that should be documented and preserved
and
as part
preserve.
of our history.
Yeah, for
You
posterity.
know?
We should.
Yeah.
I met a guy the other day who
Uh-huh.
was an expert on Sam Sharp. I'm
Wow.
gonna put you in touch with him. I'm gonna
Yeah,
because
I just love to dig into that. Like I said, I think there's so much to our history that we don't know.
we don't know.
So, for example, one of the incidents in history, the Zong, I don't know if you've ever heard of that ship, the Zong,
Hmm.
which actually played such an important role in how slavery ended. Because this was one of the last
The
ships
last ships.
that brought slaves. And when they arrived in Jamaica, right, in St. Elizabeth, this is where the captain and his crew, they claimed insurance because they had lost
Yep.
so many, and the courts in St. Elizabeth in Jamaica said, okay, these are cargo, and so it's okay, we're going to pay you out the insurance money for lost cargo.
Hmm.
And fast forward a few years in England, this came to the attention of the abolitionists, and they're like, oh, cargo, no, these are human. And so they took up the case again, and this kind of springboarded into the movement to end slavery. So there's a lot of stuff that we don't learn about our history. So I'm crazy when it comes to history.
History. And
Yeah.
I teach history now, so
Oh, you
trust me.
do? Wow.
Anywhere I go, I think my wife thinks I'm crazy.
Yeah.
I don't pass any historical site.
Right.
I'd stop there and I have to learn
Yeah.
about it. But I'd
Yeah.
love to go back to Jamaica to do all research on
Yes.
these
Yes.
great houses. Because
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
from St. Mary and great houses litter the place.
Really?
And we really don't know much about it.
Right.
We
They're
really
they're
don't.
all rotting now and
Yep.
falling to pieces, but yet that's our history. And I think our historical society does need to go, I mean, think about it. This could be a tourist attraction,
Yeah,
the Great House tours.
the only one we have looked at is, what's her name? Rose Hall.
Right.
Answer your call. No, go ahead.
Good afternoon. This is the
We'll wait
Writery
on you.
Inc.
Guys, we're taking a little break as Vangela answers one of her
I think
many
it's
phone
one of
calls.
those calls, you know? Yes.
All right. No, Vangela, you were always that writer in college. You were always that writer. And now you have been publishing books. Now you have, would you mind telling us how you got into that field up in Connecticut where you are?
Okay. So, like you said, I've always been writing. Ever since I can remember, I've been writing. And I remember I would write stories and read them to my little sister. And she would be so excited. And, so that's how I just kept writing over the years. And so, I have had stories and poems published in different places. And so when I arrived in the US, I was looking around for publishers for my work. And, I was getting rejection over and over again. And like I said, I mentioned earlier, one of the stories that I wrote in college became a novel. And so what I decided to do, instead of sitting there and getting rejections over and over again, I decided to self-publish.
Okay.
And
Yes,
so
tell
that
us
was
about
my
that.
first novel. So self-publishing at that time was a little tricky because you basically, pay someone to publish your book for you.
Okay.
And it's up to you to market it, right?
Oh,
Nothing
wait.
wrong with that because,
Hold it a moment, Vanji. Hold
yes.
on a moment here. Hold it. So you are a great writer. How many books have you written so far?
Well, how many I've written, how many I've published? I've published 17 books so
Wow.
far. and I'm still working at it.
And you still work.
Because yeah, because I have so many the stories. I had just have so many stories to tell. And what I find is my stories come to me almost fully formed. It's almost like the characters are telling their story through me. So
Hold
once
on.
I start,
Hold it. Stop there for a
no, me
minute.
no
Because
crazy.
wait, hold on. This is something I've always wanted to find out.
Yes.
No, you're gonna write a story,
Uh-huh.
and you say it comes in your mind already formed.
Right.
I always wondered how that works because I've been thinking, do some people just start out, okay, I'm going to start out telling this story about John.
Mm.
Later on, John meets Mary. Later on, an antagonist comes in. But everything comes to you already set.
Well, yes, for the most part, and what I find is like sometimes I just hear the character speak.
Man, I do your ear now.
Yep, keep it your mouth, man. But yeah, I mean, the stories come, and I think I might what it is. I might encounter a scenario.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I might meet someone, and like for example, I remember going to an event and I met this woman. She was sitting at the table with me, and she was an older woman, and she she had a crease on her forehead. And I looked at her and I said, wow, I wonder what kind of story this woman has to tell. And all of a sudden I could see a life just kind of formed around her. And so I wrote a novel
Mm-hmm.
based on just that encounter. And so I find once the story starts, somehow it just tells itself.
It's
It's
just true.
almost like the characters are telling me what to say. And
Wow.
so that's how come I've written, because I write kind of in a fever, like the stories just start coming, and 2 o'clock in the morning I'm like
You still, oh
right.
my God.
Yeah, and so I write very quickly. Sometimes the stories take years. I
Uh-huh.
might start,
Mm-hmm.
and then so I what it is to I write books, my stories simultaneously.
Oh.
So
Wait, wait.
when it stops for this story,
You start.
something else comes,
Oh,
and I start another
oh
story.
my gosh. Oh my gosh. You have
Yeah. So I
a
guess because I'm a
multitasking mind.
storyteller. Yeah.
Wait, let me ask you something. Do you
Uh-huh.
ever start your story and you have the end in mind how the story is gonna end up?
No, no,
No?
I never. Like I said, it's almost like the characters are telling their story, and I have to go where they send me. I have to tell the story as they want it, So, can I mention one of them right
Okay,
now? Or
okay, go
okay,
ahead. Go ahead.
so there is this. One of my most recent novels is called The Master's Daughter.
The master's daughter.
And that
Okay.
one is the story of a young, it's set in the 1700s. And it tells the story of Felice, who is a mulatto,
Okay,
right?
as you speak, we're looking at it on the screen.
Right.
The master's daughter.
The
Okay.
master's
Mm-hmm.
daughter. So Felice is a mulatto, okay? And she doesn't know really where she belongs, because she starts out playing with the others, with the slaves, and running
Uh-huh.
around the plantation. But then one day her father, who is a Scottish man and the owner of the plantation, says, you're my daughter, I'm going to take care of you. So he
Okay.
gives her her own room in the plantation house,
All
right?
right.
And so the slaves don't want to play with her, or they can't. She
Uh-huh.
can't go out there anymore. And the
Okay.
whites on the plantation don't want her because
They
she's
don't
not
accept
white.
her either.
So
Oh,
she's
okay, get
kind of
it.
caught in
So
between.
she's in limbo. Mhm.
Right. And so her story just kept coming, kept coming. But one of the characters in the story, I can't tell you, her name is Morgie. And even though I'm writing Felice's story,
Mhm.
it feels like Morgie is telling me her story, because Morgie is a slave.
Okay.
And so she is going through a lot of, I want to be free. Why am I a slave? And so she rebels. She does everything possible,
Mm-hmm.
to get herself, trying to be free. And so I think that story of the slave who, you wake up and you think tomorrow you're going to be free. And if this is set in the 1700s, and we know slavery didn't end until
Right.
the 1800s, that's one little girl who will never be free.
Never be free, right?
But they didn't know it. And that's why I love history, because they were living their lives hoping to be free. But we know it never
We
happened
know what
for
happened.
so many people. So what do? You
Wait,
grow up, you have your kids, and your kids are
and you watch your kids
slaves.
become slaves.
Exactly.
What about the other book, The Master's Wife?
So the master's wife is actually the sequel to the master's daughter. So
Okay.
now Felice has grown up.
Hmm.
Being a mulatto, she's not expected to marry because she can't really marry a white man.
All right. Hmm.
And she can't marry a black man because most of them are slaves. And even
All
if
right.
they're
Hmm.
free, they can't afford her. So one of the practices at that time was either you become the mistress of
Okay.
a white
Okay.
plantation owner, or they set you up in a shop. But you become a merchant.
So we're looking at another Sally Hemings, right?
Exactly. So what happened? And this is why I love history, because this is one of the reasons why, the lighter skinned people ended up with most of the time money and
Hmm.
position, because a lot of them were given shops to manage,
Okay.
haberdasheries, or
Hmm. Okay.
an inn or something like that, that they could manage because their
Successfully.
father acknowledged them
Hmm.
and gave them that. So it set us up also for a class system
Okay. Good.
that was
Hmm.
also based on color. So the lighter skinned you are, the more privilege you have,
All right.
right?
This is
And
gonna.
so you get a place of business to manage, right? And that puts you on a higher level than
All right.
the
Then
darker
they.
skinned
Right.
person. And so I started working on the master's children,
Oh my gosh. Hmm.
because you have to tell the story has to continue, because
Okay.
they are expecting to be free, but
To
up
be free.
until this time
They're not free.
they're not free. And so you're living pretty much in their shoes to say, one of these days I'm going to be free. But we know it never
We know what
happened for
happened.
so many people.
Oh.
What would you have done had you been there?
In there. Okay. What about how Beverly Johnson lost her religion? Is this religious or what?
No, it's not actually. And I was just telling you about that incident where I encountered this woman, who you could see the pain of the years on her face.
Hmm.
And so this is how that this story came about. Um, it's written in a lot of it is written in the Jamaican dialect in terms of the dialogue. And
Right.
it's a Jamaican story of a young girl named Beverly who grows, she meets this young man in primary school. They go on to secondary school and they become lovers.
Okay.
And so eventually, they go through a relationship, they get married, and then he moves to the US. But underneath it all, his name is, they call him Collie. But she so loves him that even when he does wrong, she can't see it.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So he
Okay.
becomes kind of like her religion, where, when religion holds you,
Yep. Hmm.
and I'm not being negative about religion, but
Hmm.
I'm just being factual. When religion holds you, you can't see anything else.
Especially if you're a new convert, right?
Yes, you don't. You really are, and you're afraid to critique, and you're
Right.
afraid to
Hmm.
to disagree. And so she finds herself in that position where her husband, no matter what he does, he can't be wrong.
Yeah.
And so eventually, how does she lose that religion? How does she let go? So it's not a religious story, but it
Okay.
really is just the idea of how a relationship can really hold you to the point where there's no way, you stay with it even when it's not good for
Good
you,
for you.
even when
What
you
about?
recognize. Mhm.
Okay, we're coming back to that. What about Abby's secret?
Okay. Abby's Secret is my attempt at writing a more American novel.
All right. Hmm.
Um, Abby Abby's Secret, basically, her both her parents are killed in an accident, and so as she's going through her parents' papers, she discovers something that indicates that both her parents were murderers.
Oh my gosh.
What do you do with that? If you discover that your mother or your father committed a heinous crime, what do you do? And so this is throughout the story, she's struggling with that, you know? So that's really what it is. How does she tell anyone? And if she does, what's going to happen to her?
All right, I'm looking at another interesting title. Country Gala Foreign. How does that one
Okay,
end up?
right, so Country Gala Foreign. When I arrived in the U.S. in 1989, I was, going through the immigration and customs. So I'm going through the immigration, and there's this little girl and her brother standing in front of me, and you can see she come from country, right? She looked like a country girl,
The
and so
Dulcinea, right?
yeah, and she turned to her brother and she said to him, she said, "A foreign you there, boy?" And so when she said that, I was
Go ahead.
I was floored. I said to myself, how would this young lady tell her story
Mhm.
if when she's talking to someone in Jamaica, or if she is writing, someone a letter to say,
Well,
"Gal, Miss say, me go the laundry. How when me look so hell of a machine. This take the clothes them and I ring them, I ring them, I ring them, right?" And so I started writing.
oh,
And so this became a series of articles that appeared in the West Indian American newspaper in
okay.
Connecticut. And so it was my little thing that kind of helped me through my journey with Amberzine. The character was named Amberzine, and she, would always tell her story, reminiscing on her homeland and how different it is from, where she is now. Like running out to catch the bus. And in
Uh-huh.
Jamaica, you wave down the bus, and she run out and she wave down the bus and the driver no stop. So kind of like that. So for me it was a little bit therapeutic in that it coming to America, even though you're still a foreigner and you come to a foreign land, and there's a lot of things that you have to adjust to: the
Adjust to.
language, how people deal with each other. So it was kind of my little journey through that.
All right. Now that
Yeah.
you touch on language,
Uh-huh.
you move fluidly between the Queen's English and our Jamaican vernacular or patois.
Hmm.
How do you see the use of patois today in, say, literature?
Yeah.
How do you see the use of patois?
Yeah, I think one of the things I recognize with patois that it has become entertainment. I think even when you watch some of these YouTube videos that people put out, the
Yep.
funny ones are in patois. We go to plays, and for us in America, I think that's part of what we do. When we go to watch a play, Oliver or one of those, we want to be entertained by patois. And I think somehow we've become that. People do Miss Lou, and so forth, and so to me it has become entertainment. I don't think we take it as seriously as we should in terms of making it into a language. We want to be entertained by it, and I find that one of the things that people like is when you read. So with these stories, I would read them. I would go and do readings. People would buy the books, but they would say, "We can't read the patois, and but they bought it anyway because it was almost like a souvenir,
Okay.
but they don't read it. And so I think in a sense we are losing patois in terms of making it into a language. It's now more of entertainment, I think, for us. So
All right. Let
every
me ask you
time
something
we
here.
see, go ahead.
My my daughter is into languages. She's one
Right.
of them linguists. And she and I always have this discussion that I keep saying patois is not recognized as a language.
Mhm.
because I don't think there are any rules of writing and
Right.
speaking. But she's adamant that it is a language, and she's gonna have tons of proof that it is a language. What do you think?
Officially, no. I mean, we have to work through syntax and all of that stuff. Because if you think about patois, if you come from St. Elizabeth, your patois is a little different from somebody who is in uptown Kingston, right?
Hmm.
So you might say, away your bend did I go, right? And somebody said, where were you going? Or where you did I go? Where you go, right? So it depends on where you're from, right? How we
Hmm.
pronounce words.
Hmm.
And then another, and someone from uptown might say something like, where are you going? Where, and give us a little bit of the American and a
Hmm.
little bit of the Jamaican patois combined. And so it's a little tough to actually say, let's create the language. Let's make it into a language because there's just so many different shades, so many nuances to patois. And it's tough to actually spell some of the words.
Yep. Hmm.
And I think one of the things that we're missing is that a lot of the words that we use in patois are really English words. It's just the way we
We
say it.
bastardize it. Hmm.
Exactly. We kind of the way we say it, and a lot depends on where we're from in Jamaica, and so it's a little tricky. They tried to do a patois Bible, and
Hmm.
I I'm not sure. I've read excerpts from it. I'm not sure it works because I could not recognize some of the
Yeah,
words
I tried reading.
myself.
I tried reading some of it too, and it
And
gave
yeah,
me a hard time.
one of the things I didn't like is that they spelled people's names like Mary. Mary is Mary, whatever language, right? And so they spelt it with, how you
How
pronounced
you
it,
pronounce it?
but
All right.
and so
Hmm.
I think that's part of why it's so tricky to call it a language, but it is a language, but I think not officially. And so we would
Yeah,
have to work on that. Maybe another generation will
yeah,
get it done.
my daughter would beg to differ with you. In fact, I'd love for you. I'd love to have both of you
Uh-oh.
to discuss that.
Right.
And I'm sure it would end with
She would
blows. Me.
probably win. Right. She would probably win.
But seriously, all
Yes.
the languages you've come across,
Hmm.
have you ever found any as expressive as patois?
No, no, and yeah, I mean, you're right, you're right. But what is interesting is that while I was writing that series, Country
Hmm.
Gala Foreign, right?
Hmm.
I there was a friend of mine who would visit down south, and she would visit the Gala Islands,
Okay. Yep. Hmm.
which is off South Carolina,
South
I
Carolina.
think.
Yep. Hmm.
And she always brought the newspaper to the Gullah chief for him to read it, and he could read it, right? And so that's where we realize that a lot of what we say
Hmm.
does have strong African connections,
Okay.
right? And
But
so the Gullah chief could read, the patois. So
okay.
what, like I said, I think it is sad that we are kind of losing it to it just being using losing patois to it just being something funny
Hmm.
that
But
entertains
but
us.
what fascinates me too, Vanji,
Hmm. Hmm.
when you hear some patois,
Yeah.
with please forgive me, everybody. When you hear some patois with some good bad words, I don't know if those can go together. Good bad words
Right,
with some bad
right,
words
right, right.
sprinkled in it. No,
Yes.
seriously.
Yeah.
If you remove the bad words,
Yeah.
the sentence means nothing.
Exactly. But I think
that
one
to
of
me,
yeah,
that to me was always funny,
yeah,
always funny.
yeah, yeah.
Now, let me ask you something. You, for a well-read person like you, very
Hmm.
knowledgeable.
Hmm.
How does religion? What part does religion play in your life? Because not everyone likes to discuss religion.
Hmm.
How do you
Hmm.
see religion with the history that you know today?
Yeah. It is interesting, and I probably get in trouble for saying this, family,
Mm-hmm.
some friends, but I have to speak my truth. And so as I went through researching and looking into history, one of the things, it's slavery for me means a lot,
Mm-hmm.
because I think slavery has placed us in the position that we are, where you have the darker skinned people not having access, where we were left with nothing when slavery ended. And the lighter skinned people, most of them got something. So the reason I'm saying this is I think I owe a lot to the Baptist religion,
Mm-hmm.
because they stepped up and really pushed for slavery to end. Had they not really done that. I mean, there were other religions, but I think the Baptists were at the forefront,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that actually was a religion that my grandparents belonged to, and then they left that religion for another. And so I grew up in a religious household. But I think now I wouldn't even say that I'm enlightened, but I think I am more aware of the place of organized religion, that it does a lot of holding people back and not allowing people to explore their
Mm-hmm.
god-given talents,
Okay.
because what each of us has talents, right? Some of us, as it mentioned in the scripture, have one, and some of us have a whole heap, and
Holy.
some of
Mm-hmm.
us, don't know what to do with it. But I think there are a lot of the religion tends to kind of stifle your exploring and becoming who you're supposed to be. And
Okay.
so when it comes to religion, I appreciate my religious upbringing.
Uh-huh.
I appreciate the principles that I was taught, but I
Mm-hmm.
think also that the hold, and that's why that story, how Beverly Johnson lost her religion, I
Mm-hmm.
see religion as that thing that holds you. It kind of holds you to the point where you don't know how to explore and become who you are.
Who you
And
really are.
so I
Mm-hmm.
think, for me now, being a more spiritual person, being aware of the fact that I am not the one who made myself.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how or why I came here. There is a higher power, something greater than myself. And
Okay.
I need to live my life a certain way to show that I believe in that higher power, and that I honor that higher power. So, I think religion tends to put us in little boxes and
Mm-hmm.
tends to separate us from people, where we start judging people based on their religion. We condemn people based on their religion, and that should not be. So that's kind of my little thing on religion.
Okay.
Um,
All right. Listen, you
mhm.
are. I checked the newspaper and I checked the internet and I saw where your company, the Writery, you got some award from the Chamber of Commerce in your community.
Right.
So, could you tell us what is the Writery all about? What is the Writery all about?
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, I started out self-publishing my own books.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the years, I tried various ways of publishing until I discovered a way that is,
Mm-hmm.
cost effective and gives me an opportunity to have my book sold online.
Okay.
And so as more and more people came to me asking me, how do you do it? How do you do it? I would offer them my services.
Uh-huh.
And so, as I started getting more and more customers coming, people coming and wanting to publish their books and not knowing how to do it,
How
where
to
to
do it?
go,
Uh-huh.
and I would guide them through. And then one day I paused and I said, you know what? I could do this as a business.
Uh-huh.
And so in 2018, I opened a small store, which is like 500 and change square feet.
Yes, we have a picture on the screen there right now. Mm-hmm.
Well, this actually is the new one. I
The new
just
one.
moved,
Okay.
right? So the
Uh-huh.
old one was this one is over 1,000 square feet, and so within the first year, I had 10 authors
Okay. Mm-hmm.
published through the Writery Inc. So the Writery Inc. is a few things. It is a bookstore,
Uh-huh.
right? It's mainly a publishing company where we work with writers to get their books published. So we do various genres. Um, and then we have the publishing, and then it started out being a publishing company for local authors.
Okay.
So we would display their books the in the bookstore.
And I understand you have workshops too?
We do fiction writing workshops, and we do art. We even do art workshops. So so right now we're kind of in transition. We're moving from the old store to this new one. So my sign just got hung yesterday, a couple of days ago. And so my services here, I'm offering people the opportunity to get their stories
Yeah, the
told.
stories too.
So people, we do ghost writing.
Uh-huh.
So someone who doesn't who is not writing their story but want their story to be written, I work with them on that. So we coach people through. So we do
Okay.
editing, proofreading, book formatting,
Uh-huh.
and publishing.
Yeah, my son is interested in writing. He has written quite a few things, but he
Wow.
he has no idea where else to go. We were looking at online, but
Yeah,
since you got some ideas
exactly.
going,
And this is that's what I mean. There's so many people who have written their stories and don't know where to go. And so in the very first year of operation, we won the Outstanding Business Award
right?
from
I
the
saw
Bloomfield
that.
Chamber of Commerce in Connecticut. And that was a beautiful thing. So we're moving forward. We just moved to a bigger location, so we're looking forward to just expanding and growing.
Wait, hold on a minute, Vangela. I think we
Mhm.
have a video here. Let's just see if we can get this playing for a little while.
Okay.
Yep. Uh-huh. Wow.
As you can see, it's a work in progress. We are still moving in.
Lovely work, Vangela. Lovely
Yeah,
work.
we are still moving in. So our shelves are coming in the end of the week. So
Uh-huh.
our bookstore is not quite set up.
Oh my
So
gosh.
yeah,
Okay, ma'am. Can you
yes.
can you imagine this little Maga girl from
Me
Chigwell?
say, I same thing. Me saying every day. I look at this and I'm like, this look a fine foot picnic.
The place looks great,
Who would
man.
have thought? Who would have
I'd love
thought?
I'd love to see it when you're finished setting up. I
Yes,
really love to see
yes,
it.
yes,
Looks first
yes,
class. First
yes,
class.
yes. And
Okay.
so far, when people come in, they just
Yeah.
stop and look. They
Yeah.
just stop and stare. And one of the
Wow.
things that my belief is when people come in,
Uh-huh.
that reception area is where they should just sit and feel comfortable. And
Uncomfortable.
so in the old place, that's what used to happen. I actually couldn't get any work done because people would come in and sit and then they just spill their stories.
Mm-hmm.
They would just start telling me their life story and I'm like,
Okay.
I'd sit there like Oprah and I'm like, okay, really?
You'll soon be as rich as Oprah. Trust me.
I hope
You,
so.
you Wait. Let me ask another thing. As a
Uh-huh.
writer, and I see
Uh-huh.
my son go through this.
Right.
How do you get around writer's block?
I don't have that.
Oh
I
my God, you.
honestly don't
Mm-hmm.
because even if I stop a story,
Mm-hmm.
I move on to something else because it's almost like I when I encounter people, there's something about somebody's energy that kind of I don't know tells me my mind like maybe me too fast. But kind of like I wonder who that person is. I
Mm-hmm.
wonder what's their life. And so I don't do it consciously,
Mm-hmm.
and then a story just starts form where when I used to write country gala foreign, um my friends would be every time they saw me coming around they would be like, mm-mm, don't come near me because because we would be talking and they might say something about Jamaica or
Mm-hmm.
a memory and I'm like, there goes a story, and the next thing you
Oh,
know they get featured in the paper.
they get featured in the paper.
Yeah,
Oh,
because the
okay.
story would just come to me. So
Have you ever had multiple endings and
no,
have the choose? No.
no, it's just once that's done, it's done.
It's done.
Yeah. But my stories just, I don't know. They just I think, those days in Chigwell
Mm-hmm.
sparked my imagination because,
Okay.
I was the only girl and my sister was a baby and I would run around. I would just be free to
Tomboy.
roam. And so, you go down to the bamboo clump where the river mama supposed to there.
Remember all those stories? Oh my God!
Right.
And if you
You
find the
know,
coma, you're
you go down way down where you're not supposed to go. And you go past the star apple tree. You're
oh
not
my
supposed
God!
to go past the star apple tree.
Wait,
But you still explore further, you
talking
know?
about that, but talking about that, Banji.
Yes.
What kind of parent are you?
Oh my goodness. My son would say, crazy, crazy mama. My son was born in America, right?
Okay.
And
Wait, how old is he?
he's 28. He's
Okay.
28.
All right.
Yeah, so
Okay.
he's an old
Mm-hmm.
man. He lives on his own now.
Mm-hmm.
But as a parent, I was tough.
Oh wow.
I was tough because I felt like, because, I was married and then I got divorced and then I raised my son pretty much on my own. And so I had to my son was a good kid. He was a really good son, you
Mm-hmm.
know? When he got to maybe teenage years and he started, doing his teenage thing, and I was like, boy, listen to me, I had to become that parent. I had to,
Uh-huh.
there were times I threatened him and he would look at me like, oh, my mom's crazy. But But for the most part, I think I was a good parent. I did
You did
my
a good. Mm-hmm.
best.
You did
I
well.
did my
Okay. Mm-hmm.
best. I raised him with the best principles possible, and that's where religion comes in because I had a strong religious background,
Okay.
and
Good.
so a lot
Mm-hmm.
of the principles that I learned, growing up, I applied them, and so I think, Yeah, but I was also fun.
Okay.
One of the things I learned late was, you know, we as Jamaican parents, especially, I can't speak for any other cultural group, but we tend to kind of push our culture on our kids
Yep.
and forget that they're American
The
born.
American born, right?
And
I saw you
so,
write about that the other
yeah,
day.
and
Yep.
so we tend to push our culture on them and forget about theirs.
There's.
And so we never teach them or get them connected with their own culture. We kind of push ours on them.
We're guilty
And
of that.
yeah, I was guilty of that. And then one day my son said to me, because I used to stop at the Jamaican store and buy beef patties for lunch and whatever because he was home. And one day he said to me, Mom, no more beef patties, no more. I was like, okay, right? And then I said, you know what? It's okay. It's okay because I never connected with the African American culture, which is
Yeah,
his
it's
culture.
something we don't think of it right. That's
Yes,
true. That
and
is
so
true.
we don't think about that. So when they go to school, who do they connect with?
Connect right.
They
That's
don't speak the language of the other African American students.
right. That's true. My
When
kids
they
had that
talk
problem too.
about some of the things that are part of their culture, he doesn't know
He doesn't
because I
right.
never exposed them to it.
Right. Right.
And
That's
so
true.
I think we have to understand, and this is why, recently when people were talking about the new VP elect and
VP.
her
Yeah.
not mentioning Jamaica,
Jamaica.
I got really upset because I think, we can't use that to judge
To judge right.
her because
She may
that's
not
not her
even.
job.
She may not even remember Jamaica.
Exactly. And the point is, she grew up with her mother, who was an Indian.
Right,
And
so
so
she
most
right.
of what she learned was probably the
From her
Indian
Indian.
culture from where her mother is from. She doesn't have that connection to her
Yeah.
Jamaican culture. And so it's okay. It is okay. And that's what we need to understand. We can't simply expect everyone to love our culture,
Right.
be connected to it. We do, and that's fine. I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't take over, don't not touch my culture, you know?
That's true.
But I think we have to respect
One.
somebody
Yeah.
else's culture.
One last thing before we go, Vanji.
Hmm.
Recently, you found out that you are teaching. You have been teaching the kid of one of our batchmates. How
Yes.
does that? How does that work out? How does
Oh
that
my
work out?
goodness. So it was a summer program that I was teaching at Central Connecticut State University, and there's this young lady, in the class, and she was doing very well. I mean, she was very, very quiet, but just with a sweet smile, and
Much
she
nice,
wasn't, she
much
not
nicer
enough.
than her, much nicer than her dad, right?
She not enough like her papa. That's why I never associated. No, I'm just kidding.
you
Sorry.
gonna, you gonna kill
But
us.
I just never thought, right? And so at the end of the program, we had to select, and give awards to certain students. And of course, I selected her, not knowing that she was the daughter of one of my batchmates. So
Okay.
on the evening of graduation, so I was there standing around greeting the students and
Uh-huh.
so on and so forth. All of a sudden, I hear a voice say, Vanji. I'm like, oh Lord, have mercy. Who know me now? Calling me by my first name. Turn around. It was our batchmate. It's like, oh my goodness. That's when I connected the names.
Oh,
And
that's
that's
when
when I
you.
realized. But
Okay.
it was wonderful seeing him again, because I mean, him looks same way. Him looks same. Just the hair grow a little bit
Yeah,
longer. Wish mine
young
did grow
boy,
like that.
young
But,
boy. I try to take care of mine too. So.
well, you gave up after a while.
No, it gave up on me.
It gave up on you. Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
Vanji, we've got to do this again some other
Yes.
time in the future.
Oh my
And when the
goodness.
store gets up and running, trust me,
Yes.
we'll have to do this again.
Yes. So
But
we
it's been
just can't wait for that COVID to
yep.
go away so that
Oh
we
my
can
gosh.
all, have
We
our
didn't
reunion
we didn't even
again.
get to talk about that, but that will
Yes.
come for part
Oh
two.
yeah, man.
And
Part
it's been a
two.
pleasure talking to you,
Yes.
my dear. It's been
You
a pleasure
too.
seeing you again after such a long time.
Yes.
And on behalf of the viewers of Rock the Mic, we wish you all the best, all the
Thank you.
success, and trust me, I'll be getting in touch with you to help my son out with his publishing.
Yes. Yes. Looking
Vanji,
forward.
thanks for coming on. It's
You
been a
are
pleasure.
welcome. Do it
Okay,
with thy
hon.
might.
Oh, my commodore, okay?
That's right.
Have a great evening,
You
Vanji.
too. Thank
Thank you
you.
very, very
Alrighty.
much.
You're
Okay, honey.
welcome. Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye.